Warner murder trial is now in the books. Once again, day one of witness testimony in the Dale Warner murder trial now in the books. We appreciate you joining us here on WTOL 11 Plus. I'm Jeff Smith.
And I'm Kalie Marantette. This has been a case WTOL 11 has followed since the very beginning. Tonight on WTOL 11 Plus, we're breaking down what happened inside the Lenawee County courtroom.
Plus, in a little bit, a legal expert will be joining us. He's a former judge, former prosecuting attorney, and a former Lucas County commissioner.
But first, let's get you up to speed with how we got here, starting with the night Dee Warner first went missing.
Dee was one of the most caring and giving people you could ever imagine.
She was a good person. She was outgoing, she was spunky, to say the least.
She loved to be together.
She was a strong woman.
She protected everyone.
As far as the children, she couldn't be any better. And then when grandchildren came along, I mean, she just lit up like a star.
She was adamant that she is Nana and not a grandma.
I mean, this woman would step in front of a bullet for them in a heartbeat.
It was certainly tough for the family to face my sister's remains in a man-made tomb.
She didn't deserve this. And I know deep down in my heart that she wouldn't want her children to live in remorse and grieve the rest of their lives. She loved them too much.
The case is not closed, so there's more work to be done.
There's one person that could stop all this madness.
52-year-old Dee Warner, a mother of 5, missing more than 3 years.
The case has captured attention from Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan, across the United States and beyond. Now, 1,228 days later, her body has been found. Her death has been ruled a homicide.
She's gone. She took all her bags, so somebody picked her up.
And her accused killer is awaiting trial.
Born Deanne Hardy, July 29th, 1968, missing April 25th, 2021, found deceased August 18th, 2024.
Dee lived here on Munger Road in Lenawee County with her husband Dale and their young child Angelina, just 4 miles from the spot that would eventually become her tomb.
Family and friends say they knew something was wrong when Dee didn't answer her phone or text messages.
This time was different, there's no doubt about that. The last time I ever saw her was Friday afternoon.
Her nephew, Parker Hardy, remembers thinking Dee wasn't herself in the days leading up to her disappearance.
I remember her getting out of the car. She was exhausted. She was babysitting my youngest cousin's youngest daughter. And I went to grab the baby for her, and she goes, "No, that's okay, honey, I got it." But normally our relationship is giving each other a hard time, joking, stuff like that. She was just head down, just different.
Was she defeated?
I think so.
People who knew Dee and people who didn't came together to search. They combed hundreds of acres over the next few days and weeks. Hardy says the case hit a brick wall until his mom, Dee's sister-in-law, was watching true crime TV.
That was a total mistake of my mom watching 48 Hours one night. And she grabbed my dad was asleep. She grabbed my dad the next morning and she said, "You got to watch this guy."
That guy was Billy Little Jr., a private investigator. Dee's family says he volunteered his time and promised to leave no stone unturned.
This case will go on until there's an arrest, until there's a conviction in this case, until there's a civil lawsuit for wrongful death. That we are not stopping.
He said, "I'm here to find Dee."
Pro bono.
Pro bono. And he said, if the case leads me to you guys, he said, it's going to lead me to you guys. I just want to warn you that. Yes, I'm sitting here in your facilities, but if you had anything to do with this, it's going to lead me to there. And we all said, go right on ahead.
Dee's family asked a judge to legally declare her dead in September of 2022. An attorney at that time for her husband, Dale Warner, said Dee had left before and may have just packed up for good this time.
There's
easy ways to get identification from the internet, from resources overseas. You can get identification. You can even get a different identity. It's possible today, I guess, to even get a new Social Security number.
With no one charged in Dee's disappearance by May of 2023, her family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Dale. He would be held in contempt of court in September when a judge ruled he ignored the court's order and sold off assets shared between him and his wife. Dale would be charged with murder and tampering with evidence in November of 2023.
We are back on the record in the state of Michigan versus Dale Warner.
In June, a judge ruled he'd go to trial without Dee's body being found until August 18th, when police found remains in a tank on property Dale owned, remains that would be identified as Dee's within 4 days.
And now in court, jurors are hearing the prosecution's theory that an unhappy marriage led to murder. Melissa Andrews is in Lenawee County to wrap up the first day of testimony.
We had opening statements and 4 witnesses today in the Dee Warner murder trial. He's accused of killing his wife Dee in 2021 and then welding her inside a fertilizer tank on his property. With its opening statement and the witnesses that were called today, the prosecution is painting a story of a terrible marriage, one without love and intimacy, one where Dee and Dale were just roommates, how that went sour and led to Dale murdering Dee. The prosecution is saying that Dale gave personal information to an employee of his and Dee's, and that employee sent Dee a terrible text message. Now, what family has testified to so far is that the part where this employee said, "You take Xanax," really affected Dee, and they saw her in a way that she'd never really been. They said that she was defeated, she was upset, inconsolable, hysterical, because she is seeing here through this employee that Dale has shared her personal medical information, and by all accounts, Dee was a person who always had her hair and makeup done, who always was dressed very nicely. So she really cared deeply about others' thoughts and opinions of her. So this apparently was the catalyst that drove a big blow up right before her alleged murder by Dale. The prosecution is saying that Dale and Dee often argued over their 15-year or so marriage. This is just one of the text messages that was shared during opening statements. And the defense is saying that, you know, Dee, via the witnesses that they've called so far, that Dee was very dramatic and she was known to exaggerate, and she threatened divorce multiple hundreds of times over the course of the marriage. One of her daughters testified that she did sometimes leave for a day or two every few months during the marriage to kind of reset. So this text and a couple others that were shared are indications of the status of the marriage and how it was going. So one of the things that was shared pretty early on in opening statements by the prosecution is this X-ray image of a tank. And you can see here this red part. You can see the outline of a person's body. And then in this image, you can see the police are cutting open this tank. Below it, you see that same body type figure in a tarp. And then the image over here is what was pulled out of the tank. So the opening statements for the prosecution lasted about an hour. For the defense, it was 8 minutes. Now, the burden of proof is not on the defense. They don't have to give a defense. So we are not expecting to see them call as many witnesses, and their opening statement certainly didn't take nearly as long. But this is what they're saying. They told the jury, you're not here to judge whether Mr. Warner was a good husband or not. You're here to judge whether he's committed the crimes he is charged with. I noticed that at this point, several jurors were taking notes. No one was taking notes. One young woman did start taking notes during the opening statements of the prosecution, but it was pretty far on, but several people were now taking notes when this defense attorney got up. She said, "I simply want you to focus on 3 things. 1, the government timeline for when they claim that she was murdered. The tank cut open, put inside, and moved. The events don't fit the timeline. Number 2, pay attention to what's going on the farm." She talked about how there was always like 7 or so employees around at any given time. There was lots of movement on the farm. So when would Dale have been able to get rid of Dee's body and put it in the tank? And then number 3, they want you to pay attention to how the investigation was conducted.
Well, several witnesses took the stand, including Dale's sister-in-law and 2 of Dee's children. Each witness described what they knew about the nature of Dale and Dee's relationship and recalled behaviors of Dee the day before she went missing.
Almost the shell of herself. She was going to tell him that she wanted a divorce.
All right. Was she going to tell him anything else?
That she was going to sell the trucking company.
Witnesses also described the behaviors of Dale the day Dee went missing. A stylist who saw Dee the day before she was missing also took the stand today.
We thought it was important during the course of this trial to bring in some legal insight and kind of dive deep into what we are hearing each and every day as this goes on. We're so lucky to have with us former Lucas County judge, former prosecuting attorney, former Lucas County commissioner. The list goes on and on. Gary Byers, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
You bet, Jeff.
I opened this up to you and I said we really wanted to kind of understand from a layman perspective what we're seeing play out, especially day one. You watched. What did you see as far as how the defense, you told me the defense, they need to keep it clean. They come out there, the 8 minutes was not abnormal, you said.
Yeah, that's a fairly typical opening statement because you don't want to paint yourself into the corner if you are representing the defense. You want to see what the evidence is. Your job out there is to prove reasonable doubt. And so you want to establish as many questions to the evidence, and this is a complex case. The presentation by the prosecution is very difficult, very complex, many pieces that you have to fold into a narrative for the jury, and the defense lawyer will be listening to that, and each thing that the prosecutor says they're going to prove, if they don't prove, then they're going to argue that in closing argument, saying, look, they have to prove proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and they didn't establish A, B, C, D, or E. That's reasonable doubt. Yeah. And that's kind of the way that works. You're putting together this game plan from a prosecuting attorney perspective. So how do they kind of lay out day 1, day 2, day 3? You said you don't want to give the jurors too much to handle because this thing is slated for 6 weeks. You said that might be a bit much for the jurors. Well, you don't have to call every witness that you have. Somebody may have a small piece. You have to prioritize as a prosecutor, and I think the prosecution seems to be doing this. Whether it will actually go that length of time, you wait and see. It depends on how fast the witnesses are. In the years that I was an assistant prosecutor, I can't tell you how many times I thought a witness was going to say A and B, and they ended up saying C and D. So you have to sort of react as it develops. What do you do at that point? You move on. Yeah. That's always going to happen, and you hope that it's not significant to your case. If you're the defense or the prosecution, the defense is saying, "Yeah, we're going to talk about this," you know, and so it's dealing with people and humans, and they change sometimes their opinions. They don't always remember things exactly the same, and you have to be flexible enough to react to that. The prosecution is going to start introducing pieces of evidence, things that the jury sees more tangible. It's not subjective. How important is that going forward? Well, this is even the video that they played earlier today. Important? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a circumstantial case, and you know, among lay folks, circumstantial evidence has a bad reputation. But as a former prosecutor, it is probably the most reliable, but when you put it together, the pieces, that gives you a much better account than, say, an eyewitness, because you have all of these problems with that. And so they have a very circumstantial case that they're going to build block by block by block to try to paint the picture and create a narrative so the jury can understand what they're they're doing, and at the same time, the defense will be saying, look, this doesn't make any sense, or that doesn't make any sense, and that's sort of the give and take of the trial, and then the jury is the one that's going to be listening to all of that.
The prosecutor in his opening statement today said something about deciding to go through a red light. And he was trying to make that analogy back to premeditation of murder. Now, the one thing, I want to get your take on that, but I also, if that was effective, the other thing I was curious about is the 4 different degrees of what this jury is tasked with, and we'll wrap it up after that.
Well, certainly. I mean, the big deal is whether it's going to be murder 1 or murder 2 in Michigan. And again, I'm not licensed to practice in Michigan, but it's my understanding that basically the murder 1 is equivalent to our aggravated murder in Ohio, which is prior planning and it's purposeful killing of another with prior design. That's a little harder to prove in this circumstance when you're building a circumstantial case. The other one, murder 2, is a knowingly caused the death of another. And that is one that I think they'll be able to build. And then the tampering with evidence is obviously, if they can establish that he welded somebody into a tank, that's
allegedly.
Allegedly, that's, if they can show that beyond a reasonable doubt, that's strong evidence.
Another powerful moment, and I did want to mention this, the video the prosecutor showed laid out a moment. First day the investigation is happening, drones above, investigators on the ground. All of a sudden, here comes this front-end loader, for lack of a better term on it, but it's Dale driving this thing, the prosecutor says, goes in, grabs a tank, and moves it right in front of investigators. What did you think about that moment?
Well, I think it's significant, and how it fits into the entire narrative that they're going to create. I mean, obviously, things were happening quickly, and they were waiting for cadaver dogs to show up so that they could do a search of the premises.
But the alleged balls on somebody to do that.
Well, it's gutsy,
But does that, I guess, build up what the prosecutor is trying to prove, that this man had the ability, he thought he was untouchable?
Well, I don't know if that's...
Is that going too far?
I would say perhaps desperate.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I would take away from that. That he was looking, if he was in fact guilty, that action is, what I like, quite frankly, is the fact that the police work, they had actually gotten the search warrants that they needed to do, which is what I preach to my
class,
academy at Owens. Always get a warrant if you can, and they did, and so that's good police work. And putting the parts together, you don't always know when you're in an investigation what's going to be significant, and this could very well be significant by the end of the case.
Well, day one is a big one. Gary, we appreciate the insight. Well, as this goes on, we hope we can bring you back and dive into it some more. Good to see you, my friend.
You bet.
Before we wrap up, we want to bring Kalie back in here with a look at what could be next for this trial. Kalie?
Lots of good insight there. Jeff, the courtroom will be packed once again tomorrow morning. The trial picks back up at 9 o'clock. We're told it will be another day of witness testimony. The prosecution is expected to call more witnesses, but we are still working to learn exactly who will be called. You can watch the entire trial live right here on WTOL 11 Plus starting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and all the way until the court is adjourned for the day. Plus, we will be back again Monday night at 6:30 with the must-see moments from trial as it enters its second week. And what's next? We'll also be joined by Shoemaker attorney Rebecca Shope to bring you an in-depth legal analysis. It's all Monday after the news at 6. Until then, you can stream Hidden in Plain Sight, the disappearance and discovery of Dee Warner, anytime on WTOL 11 Plus. 11 Investigates sat down with Dee's family and broke down the entire investigation in our special 30-minute presentation. That's it for us tonight. Make sure to follow us on all of your favorite social media platforms, and you can always, again, download WTOL 11 News app on your phone for free. We'll give you all the breaking news alerts and updates in this trial sent right to you. Thanks for joining us here. Have a good night.